Now, you haven't seen the new South Park yet, have you? Into the Panderverse?
I have not. If I'm completely honest, I don't think I've seen an episode of South Park for quite some time. However, I did just read a Hollywood Reporter article about it, so I feel I'm up to speed.
It's
Why don't
and
you lay it out?
well, yeah, the new episode, and like yourself, I tend to watch some of the highlighted South Park episodes, but I'm not a regular watcher, but I'm familiar with the characters. And obviously they're taking aim in this recent episode with kind of the direction that kind of Disney specifically, but kind of Hollywood in general have gone in, and kind of what we were mentioning earlier in this talk about maybe representation gone illogic in many ways, and maybe beloved franchises maybe suffering from bad decisions in an attempt to kind of come up to sensibilities of the 21st century that not everyone shares. And I know you get into heated water and people have really polarizing views on a number of these issues, but I have watched the episode and it is really funny. I mean, and I was shocked at how specifically they skewer Kathleen Kennedy and skewer Disney and
Oh, they call her
skewer.
out by name, apparently, don't
Absolutely, yeah. Cartman, he is basically a transgendered Black woman, and all of his friends are strong women of varying races.
they? Okay.
And not realizing they're in a different, basically it's almost like Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse. There's different versions of them. And Cartman's having, the regular Cartman's having these dreams where he's been gender flipped into basically what's happening with a lot of roles and remakes and reboots of various, some cases beloved franchises. So
Okay.
it really, in a nutshell, the episode really takes aim at this. And yet at the end of it, they really also call out the people on the kind of the anti-woke viral social media group that kind of will just tear into anything that they don't like if it doesn't measure up to the standard that they feel that the franchise or something that they love should measure up to or live up to. And so I found it surprisingly balanced. It wasn't kind of just a takedown of woke culture. And I'm hesitant to use that word because people that use it
Yeah, well, that's what they call it, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
and so
it's misappropriation. Ironically, it's misappropriation of those labels to criticize some kind of sort of diversity and reappropriation kind of thing, isn't it?
Right.
That's right.
So I thought it was done really funny. It's only Trey Parker and Matt. Is it Matt Stone?
Trey Parker and Matt Stone. Yeah.
Yeah. They're the creator of Book of Mormon, which is my second favorite musical of all time.
Yes, I have still not seen it, but I know it's in London these days, isn't it? So
funniest, it's the funniest thing you'll ever see.
Although I'm going to the UK later this month, but I'm not spending any time in London, unfortunately. But well, I'm glad it is balanced because I mean, I'm as equally exasperated by both sides of this, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yes, Disney, and others, but Disney might as well stick with them as that's what we're talking about, has gone completely overboard. It is a complete course correction, because for many years, they have been criticized, obviously, for many years, holding up these sort of unrealistic beauty standards and behavioral standards of what little girls ought to aspire to be and what they should, with all their princesses and all the rest of it. And all the Prince Charmings were just like sort of white, where everybody was just like a white guy, and there was very sort of token efforts to represent any other demographic, and then they got called out on that, and then they did such a hard kind of oversteer, course correction,
overcompensation
back into that, and at times, at times it defied logic, like. Well, I remember one of the ones that really did infuriate me was Beauty and the Beast, the live action Beauty and the Beast, where it was all just set in this little sort of small French town in the sort of 17th century or whatever, whenever it was set. And it was such a sort of diverse, like randomly diverse community of people that you're just like, well, this doesn't make any sense in any environment. You could have sort of, sprinkle in a few sort of, Black families or whatever it is you want to do. But they suddenly sort of did it's like half the cast, but it was all like sort of mixed race relationships and
Right.
families in ways that just defied logic within the historical setting of the piece. And of course, I know it's a fictional fairy tale,
Yeah.
but you're like, this is just ridiculous. This is just stupid. You've obviously just decided, okay, well, let's just recast 40% of the roles.
Yeah.
And you've done it with your eyes closed by the look of it.
Yeah.
And then obviously all the stuff that Pixar have done, which has resulted in a number of very, very successful and rewarding stories by giving content creators from other backgrounds the opportunity to tell their stories. But then it can get out of hand. And so I'm glad that they have sort of said, I'm glad that they're making fun of it, because nothing should be off the table, and you should be able to make fun of absolutely everything. It's just whether you're making a good joke or a bad joke. You should be allowed to make jokes about anything.
It is very funny. And
I will look it up, and I will find it, and I will watch it. But I'm glad that they're also taking umbrage with the other side of the argument, and with all the people who, because I get tired of all of that as well. There are a number of people doing sort of similar things to what we're doing, where all they do is just poke holes in all of this stuff all day long.
There's a huge audience for it. I mean, if we throw up on our thumbnail the casting of that girl Rachel Zegler for Snow White, we're going to get an extra few thousand hits, because there is an emotional trigger response. And if we just blast that, and I think you and I both, I'm not afraid to be controversial and to have my opinions, and I do think a lot of this has gone too far. I mean, I didn't like Indiana Jones, Dial of Destiny, and Kathleen Kennedy, I believe, has been blamed for screwing some of that up too. You and I disagreed, I think, a bit on that film, but I just felt they made Indiana Jones this schmuck, and the female has to be this strong. It's almost like that strong female character has become just a stereotype now. It's this.
Well, it's called a Mary Sue, I believe, is the name of that kind of character. It's like I believe that Mary Sue is a strong female character who comes prepackaged and fully formed as a kind of a capable, adept heroine with agency. And people have taken against that kind of character because, well, she hasn't learned anything, she doesn't, and you're like, well, yeah, but how many male characters arrive kind of fully formed and they're just good at stuff? It's like, well, a lot of them, but it's called like I believe it's called like a Mary Sue, and particularly when like the first of the new
I haven't heard that
Wars,
before.
Of the new Star Wars came out, people took they had huge issues with John Boyega being a black stormtrooper, and Ray, what's her name, Daisy Ridley, being, and she was like, that was the first time I heard the expression Mary Sue, is when they were talking about Ray in Star Wars. Is that because right from the beginning, as soon as she's introduced, she's good at stuff. Yeah. And so she doesn't need to learn, and she hasn't been on any kind of sort of developmental journey. It's like, well, yes, she does, but in other ways. And people were just getting infuriated with the fact that she could abseil, into the wreckage of a spaceship, like from the get-go. It's like, this is absurd. Girls can't abseil. They need to be shown how to do it by a man. Yeah. And you're like, okay, well.
See, I had all kinds of problems with that Star Wars movie, and Daisy Ray was a minor issue in that for me. It was the whole idea of reuniting the original cast of Star Wars and not having Han Solo and Luke Skywalker share the screen together and fight together. I was just that for me is a mortal sin that cannot be forgiven.
The big problem for me was just that, why does every character of note have to be related to the bloody Skywalkers or one of the other families? Why can't they just be another person who happens to be good at stuff and important in the larger story? So what? It just drives me
because there was a lot of goofing around in the Skywalker family. Man, it's like the Usher family. The Usher.
Well, I was going to get to this because, please, all you need to do is look at the comments section of our Fall of the House of Usher video to know that there are still some people out there, and people who watch at least one of our videos, who have really, really big problems with families, whether they are biological families or whether they have adopted or married into other ethnic groups. if they don't all look the same, they get very, very angry, and even more angry when they're called out about it. So so enjoy that.
I think you are married to a Chinese woman. I have a Filipino daughter. I think people could call us out if they wanted to. Our families are not homogenous ethnically.
No. Well, it's just the way it is, you know.
Yeah,
you love who you love, and that's
it.
all it should be.
I do like how Mike Flanagan was able. You know, it's always creative how you bring representation into something. And in House of Usher, you've got Bruce Greenwood's character who is white, and he's going to have 6 kids, but Flanagan obviously doesn't want to have 6 white kids, so he has the women that he sleeps with on the side obviously come from different races.
Yeah.
So he slept with an Asian woman, a Middle Eastern woman, and a African American woman. And so he introduced his multi-ethnic cast just by the
by being
sexual preferences. So which I thought was pretty creative, actually.
Yeah, it totally works. It totally works.
It worked better than the Midnight Club did.
Well, that was just like, you know, the United Colors of Benetton, where it was like, okay, we've got this group of sort of 8 children or whatever, and each one is representing a different ethnic group, and you know that feels forced.
That one, I think, of anything he's done, that was the most. Yeah, like that just does. I think in a previous film or review, we put a clip of Taika Waititi in, basically calling out that kind of representation, where you say, okay, we're going to have 8 kids and they're all going to be different colors. Anybody who's grown up knows that is no neighborhood, that is no group of kids anywhere on the planet.
That might be what your class at school looks like, but that's not what the kids who hang out after school
hang out together.
Like.
But then he went on to say what real representation, because obviously Taika would be for that, but instead make a movie about Polynesians with Polynesian writers, you know, with Polynesian actors, and tell a Polynesian story. That's representation, not how many different colors can I put into a scene.
Absolutely. You know, it has to have a logical foundation, and if it does, then audiences, I think, will be willing to embrace the story, whoever is telling it.